Good day, and thank you for joining me here at this session on workforce optimization best practices, leveraging tools and technologies. My name is Trish Patterson. I'm the co-founder and principal consultant here at Blue Kite Consultants, and I've been in the contact center world for a little over 20 years. Today I'm going to be talking about speech analytics and how you can use it to optimize your workforce. It's actually part one of a two-part presentation. I did this presentation for Interactive Intelligence at their Interactions 2013, and I've split it up here partly to keep its length down and partly because the two topics I spoke about are somewhat different. So the first one will be speech analytics. My second presentation will be on gamification. Without further ado, let's jump in. So speech analytics, what is it? And why would you want to look at this as a tool in your workforce optimization? Well, this is the critical thing. Speech analytics has made possible what was previously virtually impossible: the ability to extract meaningful information from thousands, often millions, of recorded or live calls in a timely and cost-effective manner. So we've been recording and listening to calls for a very long time, probably over 30 years. But it has been neither timely or cost-effective. In the last decade, we've really seen a standardization on, you should listen to at least 5 calls per agent per month, and that has been quite onerous and quite expensive for every organization. We've recognized that it's not really providing with a valid sample size of the quality of the agent when an agent may be taking 3, 4, 5, 10,000 calls a month to only listen to 5. But it really was the best we could do with the resources we had. And our intent was still to try to improve the overall call quality so that our customers got a better customer experience. Speech analytics changes that in a way that just cannot really be expressed. Speech analytics is listening to every single call of every single agent every minute of the day. And it's performing analysis against those calls and providing us with meaningful information about them and the ability to quickly look at specific types of calls that we may want to listen to. But overall, it's going to provide us trending overall on all of the calls an agent takes, a team takes, a department takes, the organization takes, the company takes. Let's look at that a little closer. What is it? First of all, it's call capture. So as the call is coming in, it's being captured. In some systems, the call is captured and then analyzed after the fact to look for those key phrases and categorize. In other systems, like the interactive one, the calls are actually analyzed real time. And in a real-time way, can actually start alerting supervisors. So if there's a terrible call going on, they can actually be alerted that there's a call and maybe jump in and listen or jump in and coach. They can at least use it for after the call to listen to that call and determine if they need to reach out to that customer. So the call capture is a part of it, and depending on the system you're using, you may be able to get speech analytics in real time, or you will get it on the historical recorded call. And I'd mentioned analyze. So we're going to slice and dice these calls up. We're going to look at them in very many different ways, using phrases to identify which calls we want to look at and how we're going to treat those calls. After we analyze them, we're going to categorize them. We're kind of going to put them into folders. We're going to say this is a good call, this was a bad call, this was a marketing call, this was a competitive call, this was a billing call. However we want to categorize those calls so we can easily search in that category or pick calls from that category to listen to. But also key to trend them. So how many, if they're categorized as good calls, how many of our overall calls are falling into the good calls category? And you can trend that over time to see how some of the actions we may be taking to improve our calls is working. Same with poor calls. Maybe we can't improve our call quality and make more calls better, but perhaps we can take the worst calls and make them good calls. So categorization is critical for reporting and trending, and the ability to quickly locate specific call types that we may want to listen to. But why would we do this? So what does speech analytics deliver? So here's our guy, the brown guy, with his cartload of boxes. But what's in those boxes? Well, the first thing is improved service quality. So the very thing that kind of started, I think, this desire to review every single call that comes into a contact center is to improve the service quality and the customer experience. But then we also realized, oh my heavens, there's opportunity identification, that we're able to actually get more information. So we could mention those categorization of those billing calls. Maybe we can see how they're trending. Maybe we can identify better ways of doing our billing to reduce those billing calls, which segues into the reduced operational expense. So we're not only now going to listen to calls to improve the customer experience, but we're going to look at it from areas like call drivers, and that can we reduce our operational expenses by getting rid of some of those calls by taking the driver of them and removing it. And I mentioned trends and reporting and why this is so important. This really makes the difference. So it's not just that now I can listen to calls that are good calls or I can listen to calls that are bad calls. I can get trends and reporting on every single call. And in this example, I'm looking at poor calls versus outstanding calls. And I mentioned we can look at the company level. So every single call that's coming into the company could potentially be captured, analyzed, and categorized. And if you think of poor calls and great calls, we could see out of the number of calls we get at the company level, this percentage are poor, this percentage are great. We want to try to move that. Now, one of the ways we may want to move that is by identifying are there any specific teams, departments, locations that are doing better or worse than others. Maybe we could, if they're doing better, maybe we could listen to those calls and find out what they're doing right. And also, we can maybe start a little bit of competition here between teams. So Team A and Team B have the same company, same location, same department, same calls. But Team A does much better than Team B. That's going to start, without you ever saying anything, a form of internal competitive competition between the two groups. And it goes back to our agents. So we may look at the agent in many different ways. We may actually categorize our agents into new agents and see how they are trending in terms of their poor calls or great calls. Or maybe it's really important that they be 100% compliant. So we're really only listening to, we only want to know about when they're non-compliant and see that we are keeping that number either at zero or very low, that with compliance for regulatory reasons is critical, and we need to make sure they've nailed it. But we can trend agents over time as well, just as we can the company, just as we can the team. We can trend an agent's call quality over time, and in this case, poor to excellent, and see how our coaching is working out. Are they getting better? Are they getting fewer poor calls and more great calls? But this last one really fascinates me, and this is more appropriate for where you have large customers. So it might be business to business, or it might be your customers have employees. So you have 10 customers and they have 2,000 employees each. You can measure at the customer level if there's an issue with a specific customer. So are you getting a lot of poor calls from customer XYZ compared to companies A, B, C, D, E, F, and GHI? Right? Is it a specific customer you're having an issue with? And if so, why? So it'll help you spot that and address that. It should stand out. And here's the one that I struggled with for years. Call drivers. I was a workforce manager for 17 years. And I got to tell you, a lot of my time was spent trying to understand call drivers so I could stop the calls from coming into the contact center in the first place. And I would have killed to have something like speech analytics at my fingertips. So I would have been looking at things for repeat calls. I would have been looking at transfers. Shipping. This is one I would, I can see a lot of companies getting some use out of. If you've set the expectation to your customers that it's going to be 2 to 3 days for shipping, but it actually is 5 to 10 days to actually ship, you have a choice between whether you want to change that expectation and say that it's 5 to 10 days so that they understand that it's going to take that long before they get their product, or are you going to actually change your shipping so that it does ship in 2 to 3 days? Product. Maybe you have an issue with a product. This is a great way of identifying quickly that the product is causing a specific issue. You can go in and listen to those calls and see what product is driving those issues. Maybe it's your competitor that's driving calls into your contact center. Maybe they have a great campaign out there and your customers are calling to see if you can match it, or they're calling to leave you. The marketing people for sure want to know about this. Sales is definitely going to be interested in what we're hearing from the competitive side. So there's normal competition. We understand a certain percentage of our calls will talk about the competitor, but we'll be able to trend whether that's changing, if it's jumping, if something is moving that needle in a way we're maybe not happy about. Or maybe we are happy. Maybe we don't need to advertise as much because competitor calls are dropping. And lastly was always my pet peeve, billing calls. I don't know. It's hard to get a bill that people can read perfectly. And billing calls, I think, as long as people have to pay money for something, they're going to be calling about it if it doesn't seem quite right. But maybe there's a specific billing issue, and trending on that will help you identify that more quickly. I remember having my agents, I'd see a call increasing, and the call would go out to the floor of the agents to please identify certain types of calls, and we would see if they were actually increasing, and billing was often the reason. So it'd be nice to be able to have a system that can actually maybe alert you even if you're getting an increase in this type of calls. Finally, call quality and identification for quality assurance purposes. So we can tag our calls in many different ways. Tag outstanding calls, poor calls, compliance calls, transferred calls. All of these things mean that from a quality assurance perspective, we can actually specifically search for the outstanding call, the poor call. You can listen to the compliance calls, and call transfers. Interestingly enough, and depending on the system you have, you can actually split that out and listen to outstanding agent calls. So the customer may not be entirely happy, but from an agent side, they were doing everything right. Or a call that from a customer side was poor. You may want to, just listen to what the customer had to say. But nonetheless, all of these can be categorized as poor customer calls, great customer calls, poor agent calls, great customer agent calls, compliant calls, non-compliant. The thing is that now I can use that and through quality assurance go in and listen to those calls to see what was actually going on. Now this is one slide I put together. I'm going to talk about all of the things that are on this slide. And if you download this, you can actually get this as a PDF in just this one slide, which basically walks through all the things that I think you should think about as best practices for implementing speech analytics. And the first one, and I love my goldfish here, is start small. 2 to 3 business issues is more than enough. Get your feet wet. That's another reason for the fish picture. You don't want to try to conquer the world with speech analytics. Pick something that is important to your organization, maybe aligns with your strategic or operational objectives, and pick that one as the, one of the 2 to 3 business issues that you target to address through speech analytics. Launch a speech analytics team. There's work involved in this. It's not just put in a few phrases and voila, you've got, all this critical information. It takes a bit to figure out what phrases are best representatives of certain call types. And the people that are best suited to this type of work are the people who today probably work in your business intelligence, so your business analyst team. You want someone from the contact center, someone from your quality team, but make sure you've got at least one person on that team who is a background in business analysis and business intelligence. Give them the formal training they require. Don't just give them the tool and go off and do speech analytics. Make sure that they are properly trained on the tool, that they understand how to get the most out of the tool so they can optimize your organization. Consider utilizing a vendor or third-party consultant who can provide valuable insight into what would be good phrases, how to do great queries, how to do proper testing, at least for the first out-of-the-gate project. Give your team the chance to be effective right out of the gate and give them the support they need so they have some confidence in the decisions they're making. And that can definitely be reached by utilizing a third party or a vendor to help you out. And if you think of all the customers they deal with, they just have a wealth of experience that they can bring to the plate. Regardless of your approach, you're going to have to identify a list of phrases, possibly a lot of phrases. So that's just part of the whole being able to identify a call through a certain phrase. I don't say word, people talk about word spotting, but in general, to be really confident that you've got it down, you need a phrase. Words in themselves, you don't have enough context around them for it to work. You're going to create some queries, so 2 to 3 queries to test to see if when you query against that set of calls, if you get the results you expect. Because that's what's going to start to categorize the calls. So if I think this query should bring good calls, and it doesn't, I have a problem. But if I bring it up and it does, then I know I can categorize using that query, and I can verify the categorization. So go in and listen to calls that have been categorized as good. Are they all good? Pretty much all of them are good. Don't be surprised if the first time it isn't. There's a whole process of iteration here where you fine-tune, where you get better and better and better at getting the right phrases and the right queries to get the right categorization. But when you're finally satisfied, move it into production. And again, you're going to validate there. You're going to, again, test your queries to see if everything is being categorized the way you expect. If you're happy, if it's working the way you expect, please share the results. That's the whole point of this. You've got all of this incredible information, and now it is time to share it. Now that you're confident it's consistently producing the right categorization, the right result, share it. And from that, you're going to have the business is going to start to create action plans. The wonderful part is that they've got a baseline. They can see where they are today in terms of, for instance, poor calls versus great calls, or percentage of calls that are good, percentage of calls that are poor, and they can start to trend the impact of their action plan. So if they go, well, we're going to try to take it from 5% of the calls being poor calls to 3% of the calls being poor calls, and we're going to do so by, we've discovered the following about what's happening on those poor calls, and now we have an action plan to address it. They will actually be able to see if their action plan is being effective or if it needs to be tweaked. But that's the critical part. This is not a tool just to sit and get reports from. It's something that you should be able to create action plans against and see the results in. Well, that's the end of my spiel here on speech analytics. I hope it was informative. And as I said, I welcome you to download this from our website as a PDF and share it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm Trish Patterson at Blue Kite Consultants, and you can, there's a little email that if you use it on our website, bluekiteconsultants.com, that email will come to me. It also has our phone number if you'd like to chat. So I hope you've had a good time and a great day and wish you all the best. Thank you for joining me.